Have you ever found yourself on the outside? Have you ever found yourself kind of separated from the group, that you were unchosen, that you were left out? We see in our text this week, we see a man who's been separated from society. He's been separated from the community because of a disease. He had leprosy. It was believed to be a terribly contagious skin disease, and he was forced to live outside of the community. Often lepers in the same area would live together. They would form a community of their own, but they were forced to leave their family, their friends, their job. They were forced to move away, and whenever they saw anyone coming their way, they were to yell, "Unclean! Unclean," as if to keep distance between themselves and the other people. What's interesting is that when Jesus comes to the area, when Jesus comes in the same area as this man, instead of keeping his distance, instead of yelling unclean, he approaches Jesus. He breaks all kinds of social protocol. He breaks all the rules. Instead of casting him away and telling him to leave, Jesus accepts him in. You could see those traveling with Jesus probably leaving. They're gaining distance. They don't want to catch leprosy. They don't want to find themselves with this same disease. And the man comes to him and says, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." And Jesus says, "I am willing. Be clean." But he doesn't just say the words. These are not just words that come out of Jesus' mouth. Instead, he reaches out and he touches the man. A even greater, more unthinkable thing than him approaching Jesus. Because it was thought that if you touched a leper, you too became unclean. In fact, in the Old Testament law, it said if you touch anything that a leper has touched, you're unclean until the end of the day, until you are able to wash, until you're kind of able to hit the reset button. And so Jesus reaches out and he touches the man. Instead of his uncleanliness being transferred to Jesus, Jesus transfers to him his health, his righteousness, his purity, his wholeness. I ask, have you ever found yourself on the outside? Have you ever found yourself in a position that you are unlovable, maybe even just hard to love? It seems hard to love this man because of the distance you had to keep, because of the disease he had, because of the circumstance that his life found him in. And sometimes we are hard to love. Sometimes our attitudes are awful. Sometimes our behavior is worse. Sometimes the things we say and do begin to build a chasm, a distance, a gap between us and those we love, us and those who are around us and our circle of friends. And when we find ourselves in these situations, how do we respond? Do we respond like this man? He approaches Jesus and he falls humbly on his knees. He realizes he has nothing to give. He realizes that there's nothing that he can do to make this situation better. And so all he can do is fall at the feet of Jesus and call upon his mercy, call upon his grace, call upon him. He said, I know that you have the power to heal me. Are you willing? And too often in life, it's easy for us to believe that God has miraculous power. And we forget the fact that he has miraculous love. We forget that God doesn't just have in his hands all the power to do anything in the world, but that he loves us extravagantly and he shows us with a costly demonstration of his love by sending Jesus to the cross. It's not just God's power that's impressive, it's God's love for us. And Jesus says, I am willing. And he reaches out and he touches the man. He touches the man. He hasn't been touched for years. He had missed the feeling, the warmth of human touch. And in just a moment, Jesus restores his skin to health. He heals the man. In just a touch, he restores the man. He restores his dignity. And he restores him to emotional health. But more importantly, maybe even more important than all those, in just that touch, he restores him to his community. He is no longer untouchable. He is one who's been touched by God. He's no longer an outsider. He's no longer an outcast. No, now he can be welcomed into the family. And we, all like this man, have been on the outside. We've been untouchable. We've been an outcast. We've been one who's been hard to love. But through a costly demonstration of God's love, through his extravagant love on our behalf, no longer do we find ourselves on the outside of the community. No longer do we find ourselves just past the lengths of the love of others. But no, we've been welcomed in. We've been welcomed home. We've been brought near. And we have a place around the table. We have a place in the community. We have a place among the people. We've been restored. Our sin has been washed away. Our sin has been atoned for. And now we have a place because of the touch of God. Not just his miraculous power, but his miraculous love displayed and shown for us. So maybe this week, maybe as we consider this event, we consider this episode in the life of Jesus, that we put ourselves in the position of the leper and we realize how much God loves us. It's not just the power he wants to show in our life, but it's the love he wants us to receive from him and then pass on to others. So who can you love this week in such an extravagant way that they would know God loved them no matter what they've done, no matter who they are, no matter how much on the outside they feel, that they can know that they have a place around God's table, that they are one who's loved by God.